Welcome back to the Ben Mulroney Show. It's Monday, October 27th, which means it is time for This Week in Politics, the Monday edition. Please welcome Max Fawcett, lead columnist for Canada's National Observer, and Dimitri Soudas, former Director of Communications for Prime Minister Stephen Harper. Guys, welcome.
Good morning.
Great to be on the show.
Okay, so we were speaking earlier today with former Conservative MP Rick Perkins, who had a chance prior to the last election to read the unredacted contract between the Canadian government and Stellantis as it related to the EV, the building of EV batteries in Canada. And there were a few things that stood out because as we gear up to understand the larger contract that led to the Stellantis decamping from Brampton to move to Illinois, a lot of us were saying, we don't know who broke the rules until we know what the rules were. And this is, in my opinion, a good indication as to sort of the quality of the writing of the contract, right? Like how fulsome was it? How much foresight did they have? How many scenarios did they envision? What guarantees existed to ensure that Stellantis stays where they committed to staying? And based on what Rick Perkins told us, there are some issues in this contract that should be concerning. First of all, the fact, Dimitri, that this is a 26-page contract representing hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars, and the fact that there was no guarantees for unionized workers, Canadian workers. In fact, everybody who was employed, or a lot of the people who were employed, had to be fluent in Korean. There's if that's what we're gearing up for when we read this next contract, I don't think it bodes well for the Canadian government.
Well, I got to tell you that contracts of this magnitude, usually the table of contents is longer than 26 pages. And I guess the difference between former Member of Parliament Perkins and current Finance Minister François-Philippe Champagne is that former MP Perkins actually read the contract. I heard his interview as well, and it's outrageous that the government of Canada signed such a contract without the minister responsible actually reading the contract. And now there is a very high likelihood that the government of Canada has no recourse to sue Stellantis. And at the same time, I'll just recap and I'll say at the same time, it is heavily subsidizing an industry for which demand is not proven yet, while demand for things like oil, natural gas, critical minerals is obviously critically important not only to the Canadian economy, but global supply chains. And the government of Canada over the last 10 years has pretty much put a handbrake on those sectors.
I'm not looking to paint the Liberal government negatively at all. In fact, I am hoping against all hope that what comes to pass is we learn that this is a bulletproof contract that was written by the greatest legal minds so that when push comes to shove, Stellantis has to fork over a boatload of money for the workers who have been, whose jobs and livelihood have been decimated. I want to believe that. But if past is prologue, I'm concerned.
Sure. I think we're a little bit out over our skis here on this issue. The Ontario government, led, I believe, by a Conservative, signed and negotiated the exact same contract with Stellantis over the battery plant. It has the same terms. And so this is not a Liberal issue. This is a all of government issue.
Yep.
Approaching these files.
Agree.
Sorry.
Yeah. No. No pushback here.
And low, people like to throw around the big headline number, 15 billion. Those are production subsidies. Those only get paid out if Stellantis builds the batteries at that facility. And just, as a footnote, the reason why they needed people to speak Korean or have Korean workers there is because we don't know how to build batteries in Canada. We do not have a vibrant, EV battery sector. That's what we're trying to build here. And so part of this is technology sharing. We bring companies into the country who have expertise. They set up shop. They do partnerships with our own companies. And we gain that knowledge, gain that expertise going forward. That's the whole point of the Ontario government and the federal government's support for the EV battery sector. And yes, MP Perkins said that the demand for EVs is declining in the United States. It's also skyrocketing in the rest of the world. And so we have a choice to make here in Canada. Do we throw our chips in with a U.S. auto sector that is becoming more and more uncompetitive globally with each passing day? Or do we work with the rest of the world in meeting demand for a product that is growing in every other country in the world. But it's not just me saying this. Corey Tanaik, noted socialist, was on his podcast last week saying essentially the same thing. Do we want to follow this U.S. auto sector down the drain? He said Trump's tariff measures are killing that industry. And we may be a collateral damage there if we're not careful. So should we be opening the doors to, Chinese EV companies? Should we go?
There you go. Yeah, and I'm glad
Korean companies?
I'm glad you opened the door, because that's where I was going to go next. And our prime minister is in Asia right now, and he's on the eve of a conversation with Xi Jinping. We've been talking about Chinese EVs as if they were four wheels, mobile spying, an army of mobile spying cars with cameras and microphones. However, if in the absence of a better option, maybe this is the option. I don't know. I'd love to hear what you have to say, Dimitri.
Okay, so to Max's point, let's talk about the elephant in the room. The elephant in the room is that the reason that demand for electric vehicles in Canada is not increasing but declining is because they are too damn expensive. They're too damn expensive because there's a monopoly. We don't have European electric vehicles and we don't have Asian electric vehicles. So one consideration, as Max mentioned, and as you mentioned, Ben, is removing the tariffs on Chinese EV vehicles. But also another option, all these plants, all these assembly plants that we have here in Ontario. What did Howard Lutnick say the day after the meeting with President Trump and Prime Minister Carney in a private meeting in Toronto? He said that the American administration's objective, to no uncertain terms, is to completely erase and make disappear assembly of vehicles in Canada. So what if, and I'm just pontificating here, thinking out loud, what if all these assembly plants that are currently manufacturing American vehicles, and I guess Canadian vehicles as well, turn into electric vehicle manufacturing plants? Otherwise, if the Americans take it to the finish line, there will be no cars to assemble here in Canada.
Yeah, I think we have to have these tough conversations, and I'm very glad that Mark Carney is willing to have them. Look, it seems like some water was put in the wine in terms of our relationship with India. Just a couple of weeks ago, it was announced that we're trying to reset that relationship. I think it's important that we reset our relationship with China as well, especially given the headwinds that we're facing from Donald Trump. So I do think that we have to put on our big boy pants and have some really adult conversations. How far, though, Max, should we as a country be willing to go with a country like China? We know that they have human rights issues. We know that they have intellectual property issues. We know that they're not necessarily honest brokers. But then again, south of the border, we don't really have an honest broker either. So how fast, how deep do we want this relationship to go with China?
Yeah, that's the tension we're in now. It's not like it used to be where there was a choice between democracies and autocracies. Now it's a choice between sort of decaying, increasingly autocratic American democracy and China and India, who obviously, as you mentioned, and as we all know, are a long way from being where we are on things like human rights and free speech. So I wouldn't get too far. I wouldn't get too concerned about spyware and things like that. I mean, China builds our iPhones, they build our computers. We don't seem to have any problem with that. I'm sure there are things we can do from a regulatory perspective to just ensure that our data stays in Canada, that they can't put kill switches on the cars and whatnot. But look, China is increasingly dominating the European market. They are rewriting the global South in terms of the technology they use. They are where the puck is going, to use that horribly overused Canadian metaphor. And we really do have to kind of find a way to thread the needle between not upsetting the Americans, not abandoning them, because of course we can't. We'll always do business with them.
Hey,
but also recognizing things are going.
Okay, stick a pin in that. We're going to come back. We're talking about Kamala Harris possibly running for president again. This is This Week in Politics. Don't go anywhere. Thanks so much for watching the show. Now, if you enjoyed what you saw, hit that subscribe button so you never miss another episode of The Ben Mulroney Show.